Also, data protection is much less a matter of public opinion. You know, the public doesn't have good knowledge about data protection, what that actually is or what it does. You know, so the public knowledge which you have to rely on in your decision about data protection is much worse than the public knowledge about surveillance. I've just been holding a talk in Kiel with the Datenschutzzentrum there, and then one guy told me that he was on a tour in a museum, and he was asked what his job was, and he said, well, I'm into data protection, and the tour guide said, oh, that still exists. You know, that's really the opinion they have. They don't know if that really exists or what it is or what it could be. So it's not there. And of course, when you say that, well, whatever is much in the media or much in the news plays a more important role in your decision making, then we can ask ourselves, well, what's more in the media? Breaches of privacy and dramatic cases about surveillance, or success stories of protected data? You know, I have no one success story of protected data or stuff like that, like which really in detail. You hear much more about what the guys are doing, what the bad stuff happening, and so that's bias of the public opinion already. And the stereotypes involved in data protection are not exactly trustworthy either. I mentioned that before. Many people have a suspicious attitude towards the state, towards the industry, towards the boss, and whoever wants your information, especially in Germany. So I think that the data protectors, or the people who invented data protection in order to help us in our informational, to maintain our informational self-determination, made a couple of mistakes. You know, they had this esoteric perception of themselves. Well, if I can know this and be informationally self-determined, anyone can. You know, that's a conclusion we find in many areas of society, which is always wrong. You know, because you have your own set of knowledge and values, and that doesn't mean that anyone else can do that as well. And of course, it's natural for them. These guys doing data protection, there's politicians, lawyers, and scientists, right? These three groups. And it's natural for them to overestimate rationality, because those are groups which rely on rationality a lot. You know, they are thinking rationality, they have to be rational in what they do, argue rational. So they think, well, rationality must really be the thing by which people live, you know? Decision making must be rational and informed the way I know it. So I can assume that the public generally does this the way I do it. And of course, as well, they have a different perception of the involved stereotypes. You know, state authorities and lawyers, that's what they are, that's what their friends are, so they don't bother about that too much as well. But there are mistakes, because that's not a situation which holds for much of the society. And actually, we can see some cases already where certain social groups have lost their informational self-determination and where you can't bring it back. And those groups, and here I relate to the motto of the Congress, those groups are precisely those groups who think that they have something to hide, right? They don't really have to have something to hide, but as soon as they think they have something to hide, then they've lost their informational self-determination. They will start to manipulate themselves. And we can see some very alarming cases already. For instance, as I've been told from some politicians lately, they have witnessed that drug addicts and troubled families seek much less help lately. You know, we have all these offers for drug addicts or for troubled families to seek help, social help and stuff like that. And they're not going there anymore. And the people have been asking them, hey, why are you not coming anymore? What's the matter? And they say, well, I don't know what happens with my data. You know, you type all that in, and that's networked, and who knows who else knows that, and then maybe I don't get money, or maybe I come to jail or whatever, so I don't want to go there, I don't want to give you my data. And so they start to manipulate themselves already, right? They have lost their informational self-determination in fear of repercussions, what might happen with their data and surveillance. Another thing is press informants. That's something we have heard a lot too. You know, the press has been telling us we're losing our informants. We're losing people who are telling us what's happening in the insides of politics and economy. Because those people fear that their anonymity cannot be guaranteed as well. You know, you see cases like the telecom scandal where then the big bosses, well, okay, there's data protection, but they do what they want anyway, you know, because they're big and powerful, and the worst thing that Peter Shah can do is to say, well, don't do that again, you know. So So of course they fear, well, they will find out, you know, they can observe me, they fuck data protection, you know, they're doing that anyway, and I'm losing my job, I'll never get a job again, so I keep quiet, you know. But we need those people, you know, we need those press informants. The whole idea of an independent press relies on press informants, on people who are brave enough to come up when some shady things are happening inside some organizations, you know. But that is something we have lost. We seem to have lost. And another point which we're losing is people in court cases, who are involved in court cases, like witnesses and accused, and they fear talking shop with their lawyers and telling them the truth, not because they distrust their lawyers, but they distrust the lawyers communicating with other lawyers, and they distrust the state probably surveilling the lawyers and stuff like that. We had cases like that happening. So they fear that, and they hold back the truth in front of their lawyers, and that's another thing which is very bad and happening as well. So what we see that in these cases in particular, that the true basis of decision making is different. You know, we're not deciding rational upon our substantial and informed knowledge on data protection and surveillance when we come in such situations, or when people come in such situations. They decide upon the stuff they've heard, you know, the stuff they've heard in the news, the stuff their friends telling them. They keep exaggerating that because they have a certain opinion and so on. And that's what they rely on in their decision making, you know. They have these faint ideas about what surveillance is, you know, it's omnipresent, unstoppable, networked, everything. And everyone powerful can in principle know a lot about me. That's something that really is diffused in the public mind already, and that's the basis upon which they decide. And of course, that's not a basis anymore where you have your informational self-determination. There's something you have lost then. Yeah? You don't have any certainty by which you can decide. We can also see some foreseeable new problems coming up with the networking of databases and what has been called the eternal memory of databases and their public perception, right? Because then people start thinking about all this database stuff going on basically in the economy, but also from the state. And then some cases crop up in the press, you know, and then they see, these databases, then it's not such a good thing either. For instance, health databases are now being developed, and we know that there's some sort of function creep going on with databases, and well, okay, they say it's all very confidential and only for medical personnel, and so, but what about in 10 years? I don't know, and so if I have something bad now, do I really want to go to a doctor if I have to take the risk that somebody in 20 years will know that, which I probably don't want, you know. Another thing is school databases, which they're currently coming up with in Berlin here. If you're a kid, well, you're a kid, you know, you're a teenager, you're doing silly stuff, you know, and then you did something silly, and then you know of these databases, and you have to think, well, damn it, I did something wrong, I screwed up, oh man, and then I have this database, and this thing will be following me for the rest of my life, because in fact it will, you know, and we don't know what will happen with these databases and whether future employers can look into that, you know, so. That also influences your informational self-determination, because you have this idea that something might happen with your data, and then you decide differently and you choose your path differently. So that's all a bit of a bad situation. We've really lost this sort of informational self-determination. And what can we do now? If we want to protect real people, not lawyer, super rational, super people, but real people who are irrational, who are too busy to gather all the facts, who are not scientifically minded, can we do anything to protect them, to provide them with something? And of course, there are a few options how we could shift the public knowledge or the public opinion more towards the direction of data protection, right? I mean, we would have to be a bit more dramatic and drastic in data protection to bring that to the public mind in a sufficient degree. We would have to dramatically increase penalties for data crimes, for instance, like nothing below 10 years of jail, which of course is entirely unthinkable, but that would have to be an option. We would have to have something like free and independent data protectors, you know, not lawyers and politicians, but people whom the average guy trusts. We would have to decomplexify and simplify surveillance again, so people could really go and look inside what's happening technologically. What are the technologies? What are the options at hand? What could happen to me, you know? That's not going to happen either. And we would have to decomplexify and simplify data protection a lot, you know? We would have to really bring out very clear-cut stuff which says, okay, this is what data protection can do for you, and all that, you know, enlighten the public about that in very understandable terms. And of course, we would have to get good press and visibility for data protection to get sort of a counterweight to all the bad press we have from surveillance. But that's not a really real thing which is going to happen. I mean, let's be honest, that's out of sight, any of those things I said. And still, if all those things would happen, there would still be skeptical people and people who think they might probably have something to hide. And those will never again be informationally self-determined, you know, in any sort of surveillance-related situation. So society-wide manipulation just by the mere existence of surveillance is actually a fact, right? That's something we have to consider right now, no matter whether we have something to hide or not. So my conclusion, personal conclusion, is if we want informational self-determination back again, and we have seen that this is an important thing to do, then we should not go into trade-offs. You know, we should not say, well, okay, it's too late now. We have to try to make our way and try to find some way to get along with this. I say no. We have to go back. We have to be much more radical, and we have to say we want back this policy of avoidance of surveillance, right? We don't want these technologies, we don't want preemptive crime fighting, we don't want all this surveillance stuff get out of our country, get out of our minds, and we have to abandon that again. And if we don't do that, the only thing we can do, and I think we should do that as well, if we say that we're not able to abandon surveillance again, to avoid surveillance, then the least thing we should do is that we should not uphold this vain illusion of informational self-determination anymore. So if we're not able to actually protect that, we should admit that we've lost it. We should at least be honest enough to go out to the public and tell them, well, informational self-determination was a nice idea back in the 80s, but it's no longer existing, and deal with it, right? That's it. Thank you. When I was asked if you have questions to please take the mics for the recordings, right? So anybody questions? Comments?
Nothing?
Yes? Okay. Give him a mic. Okay.
I totally agree with your conclusion that we have to get back to avoidance of surveillance. But isn't that a problem? Because a lot of uninformed people, for whom the situation is already complex, think we need surveillance because there are things that upsets them, like child pornography, etc. These things upsets them, and they think we need surveillance, and so they think we cannot get back to avoidance of surveillance. I think it's impossible either.
Mm. Yeah, that's a different strain of argument, of course, to argue against surveillance in this these security-related situations. I think, well, that is something where we have to politicize the public more, where we have to inform them more, where we have to tell them that surveillance is not even that efficient, you know, and that in the basic cost-benefit ratio which we have to make as a society, we pay much more, you know, we pay much more for basic values, for basic general ideas of democracy, of freedom, of civil rights, than we earn in the end with these few child molesters and these few terrorists whom the police would have caught anyway. I mean, that's another point, because all these efficiency studies which we do on surveillance technologies show that in the end they're not very efficient, you know, they would have found those people anyway. So we have to, that's the thing we have to do on another level, of course. So cost benefits.
Hello. While I don't disagree with your basic premise here, You're saying a few things which make me very scared and put my hairs on end. And the most scary thing you say is we must put power, in this case in terms of data protection, not in